Chapter 655. The black-robed lady looked at Yi Xian. I'm telling the truth. They're currently plundering our mysterious heaven continent without the slightest scruple. Before coming to our mysterious heaven continent, they've already plundered several universes. Yi Xian asked, They are plundering without restraint? She nodded, Northern Army. This is an army from Xuanhuang Great World. This army often plunder resources from small worlds and universes. Everywhere they go there is nothing left. Yi Xian frowned, So arrogant? Arrogant? The black-clothed woman sneered, And this is just an outer legion. You don't know their main legion. Their main legion is the real arrogant ones. Wherever they go, those who obey them will prosper and those who oppose them will die. Yi Xian went silent for a moment before looking at Seven. Seven was expressionless. Kill. Yi Xian smiled, Just what I wanted. He then looked at the black-shirt lady. Lead the way. She said solemnly, Just the two of you? Yi Xian nodded, Just the two of us. She shook her head, If it is just the two of you, you will be sending yourselves to death. Yi Xian smiled, Why? She said, They have many people and are strong. Yi Xian said, You don't have to worry about that. Lead the way. The black-clothed woman looked deeply at Yi Xian and Shao Qi before leading the way. On the way Yi Xian looked at the jade seal in his hand. What is this? The woman in black had a complicated expression on her face. The jade seal of my Han Empire. Yi Xian asked, You said that there are treasures inside. She nodded, Yes. Yi Xian asked, How do I open it? She wanted to say something but stopped. Yi Xian smiled, Why? You can't bear to part with it now? The black-clothed woman sighed softly, The rest of the treasures in my Han kingdom have basically been looted. Only this jade seal is left, and within this jade seal, there is a supreme divine grade dragon vein. Super divine grade. Not far away, Seven suddenly said, Transcendent god grade? The black-clothed woman nodded. Transcendent divine grade. Seven looked at Yi Xian, This thing is okay. My god country only has one. Yi Xian flicked his finger and the jade seal flew in front of Shao Qi. For you? Seven shook her head, No. Yi Xian asked, Why? Seven said, Keep it. You don't even have one. When he heard this, Yi Xian's heart felt warm. He smiled and was about to say something when Seven said, If I say no then no. Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Xiao Linger appeared in front of Yi Xian. The sixth floor said that they can give this to me. If I put it in the pagoda, there will be a lot of spiritual qi in the pagoda. My spirit tree can absorb it and so can Xiao Ta. Yi Xian asked, Senior, is that so? He didn't really trust this little Ling, he didn't know where this girl learned to lie from. Sometimes she would lie. The sixth floor said, Yes. Your pagoda needs spiritual qi too. A dragon vein of this level is good for the pagoda. Yi Xian nodded and passed the seal to Xiao Linger. Xiao Linger grinned and hugged the seal before returning to the prison pagoda. In just a moment, a white dragon appeared on the second floor. Transcendent divine grade dragon vein. Along with the appearance of this dragon vein, the spiritual qi in the prison pagoda became denser. He could sense that Xiao Ta was getting excited. Of course, the most excited one was Xiao Linger, because the dragon vein would be of great help to the spirit trees she planted. Outside the prison pagoda, the black-clothed woman beside Yi Xian suddenly said, I feel like you don't understand their strength. Yi Xian smiled and didn't say anything. Black-yellow great world. He knew that this world must be extremely powerful because this force had been sucking the blood of other universes. Under such circumstances, the people of black-yellow great world must be getting stronger and stronger. The black-clothed woman said in a low voice, Why do you want to go against the people of black-yellow great world? Yi Xian collected his thoughts and smiled, We have some grudges with them. Saying so, he looked into the distance. How long until we arrive? The black-clothed woman said, An hour. Yi Xian said softly, How many people are there in the army from black-yellow great world? The black-clothed woman said, Only 100. 100. Yi Xian looked at the black-clothed woman and was stunned. 100 can destroy your black-blue great world? The black-clothed woman's face was ugly. The strength of these 100 people is beyond your imagination. Yi Xian said in a low voice, All of them are in the Emperor realm? The black-clothed woman shook her head. There are only about 30 Emperor realm, but they are extremely powerful. Moreover, they are wearing the best equipment. Not only that, each of them has a Tendo realm celestial wolf demon beast. Saying so, she looked at Yi Xian. You will know how terrifying they are when you meet them later. Yi Xian nodded, Let's hope so. The black-clothed woman glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. About 4 hours later, the black-clothed woman suddenly said, "It's in front." Yi Xian and Shao Qi looked up and saw a planet not far away. At this moment, this planet was emitting an extremely pungent smell of blood. Yi Xian frowned. "They won't massacre the people of your continent, right?" The black-clothed woman was expressionless. "That's what they did." Hearing this, Shao Qi frowned. "Even ordinary people?" The black-clothed woman nodded. "What they mean is to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots." Eliminate the weeds and eliminate the roots. Shao Qi shook her head. Inhumane. Although God Nation had waged war, they hadn't slaughtered the weak. The actions of the black-yellow Great World were inhumane. They were purely plundering. At this moment Shao Qi suddenly said, "Kill them all." Chapter 656. Kill. The moment Yi Xian charged out, a wave of sword light enveloped the group of people. The Northern Army didn't back down in the slightest. "Kill." The general in the lead bellowed, and 100 people charged out in unison. 7 raised her head and looked into the sky. In the next moment she charged up into the sky. The girl in black glanced at Yi Xian in the distance, then turned and left. In the distance Yi Xian charged straight into the group of 100 people. Among them there were 7 great emperors, while the rest were at least at the mastery realm. One had to admit that these 100 people were very strong. With their combined strength they were able to suppress Yi Xian. If it was a one-on-one fight, Yi Xian could kill anyone in a second. But when they teamed up there was nothing he could do. Boom. At this moment Yi Xian suddenly retreated several hundred meters. As soon as he stopped, several spears pierced through the air toward him. Yi Xian slashed forward with the executing heaven sword. Dizzy. The spears were shattered in an instant. At the same time he took a step forward and punched out. Fist of burial. Rumble. In an instant the dozen or so soldiers charging at him were pulverized into mincemeat. But the next moment, a spear stabbed into his forehead. Bang. Yi Xian retreated dozens of meters. The spear hadn't broken through his defenses. His physical body was at the level of a great emperor. Yi Xian stomped his right foot and turned into a wave of sword light that shot forward. Dizzy. Nearby, several soldiers' heads flew into the air. But soon Yi Xian was forced back again. But in the blink of an eye, he was once again charging at the group of soldiers. The number of northern region soldiers on the battlefield was dwindling, and Yi Xian was killing a soldier with every passing moment. Kill. There was only one thought in Yi Xian's mind, and that was to kill. He had no good feelings toward the people from Black Origin Great World at all. When the people from Black Origin Great World came looking for him, it was already destined that they would oppose each other. Either you die or I live. The more Yi Xian killed, the fewer Northern Army soldiers there were. Now there were less than 50 of them left. Yi Xian had already killed half of them. As for Yi Xian, not only was his physique at the Emperor realm, but he was also wearing a Dao realm defensive treasure. Although he was injured, it wasn't fatal. Bang. Right at this moment, Yi Xian was suddenly pushed back by the joint forces of over a dozen people. After Yi Xian was pushed back, the leader of the Northern Army suddenly shouted, "Retreat! Retreat!" They no longer wanted to continue fighting with Yi Xian because they had already lost too many people, and this Yi Xian, not only did he not weaken, he instead became stronger. Therefore he decisively chose to retreat. The remaining dozens of Northern Army soldiers turned around and left. Yi Xian asked, "Really?" Shao Qi nodded. "You are poor, too poor. I understand you." Yi Xian. A moment later, Yi Xian started to clear his spoils of war. Over 100 storage rings. Looking at the 100-odd storage rings in front of him, Yi Xian grinned from ear to ear. Finally he counted them. Along with the ones in front of him he had a total of 5. 7 billion God crystals, 52 Dao realm treasures and some miscellaneous items. Of course, there was also the transcendent grade God meridian in the tower. Close to 5 billion God crystals. Yi Xian exclaimed. He had never seen so much money in his life. He didn't earn this money, he got it from killing people. He, Yi Xian, killed people based on who they were, but these people from Shenhuang Great World didn't. To them, the world outside of Shenhuang Great World was a target for them to plunder. One could imagine how rich the people in that world were. Right at that moment, the black-robed girl appeared in front of Yi Xian and Shao Qi. Behind her was a boy who was around 6 or 7 years old. His face was a little pale, but there was no fear in his eyes. The black-robed girl looked at the corpses all over the place and then at Yi Xian and Shao Qi. "Thank you." Shao Qi looked at the black-robed girl. "How many people are left here?" The black-robed girl said solemnly, "A few." Shao Qi said, "Bring them to the chaotic universe." There will be people there to settle you. Chaotic universe? The black-robed girl was stunned. You are from the chaotic universe? Shao-Chi nodded. Have you heard of it? The black-robed girl said solemnly, yes, I heard that a fifth-dimensional treasure appeared there. Yi Xian, the black-robed girl said, the people from Xinhuang Great World won't let the chaotic universe off. Shao-Chi looked at her. I'm still alive. Who dares to bully my people? The black-robed girl looked at Shao-Chi. Can all of us go to the chaotic universe? Shao-Chi nodded. Yes, but you must have your own value. Do you understand? The black-robed girl said solemnly, we have many factions and sects here. They are all hidden. If we go to your side, Shao-Chi said, bring your martial path civilization there. When you go there, people will find you and communicate with you. Of course, when you go there, you will be people of my God country and have to follow the rules there. Do you understand? The black-robed girl nodded. Understood. Shao-Chi pointed and a white light entered her brow. This is the route. Go. The black-robed girl nodded and then pulled the boy away. At that moment, the boy looked at Yi Xian. Did you just kill all of them? Yi Xian nodded. The boy looked at Yi Xian. How can I become as outstanding as you? When he heard this, Yi Xian was delighted. This fellow really knew how to speak. Yi Xian got up and walked up to the little boy. He opened his palm and a Dao-level sword appeared in his hand. He handed the sword to the little boy. The violet-robed old man gazed at the old man. Ku Jin, you actually asked for guidance. The old man glanced at Shao-Chi and said, help me keep her busy. The old man glanced at Shao-Chi and smiled, what's in it for me? Ku Jin spoke coldly, 500 million divine crystals. The old man chuckled, 1 billion. Ku Jin glanced at the old man, all right. The old man roared with laughter and then he gazed at Shao-Chi. He sized her up and said, I presume that you're a monstrous genius. Come, let me see how monstrous you are. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. An afterimage flashed across the battlefield. Shao-Chi had an emotionless expression on her face as she suddenly vanished. A sword howl suddenly tore through the sky. In an instant, the violet-robed old man moved 3 kilometers back. At the same time, one of his arms had vanished. After the old man stopped moving, he gazed at Shao-Chi with terror. You? When he spoke up to hear, he suddenly turned around to gaze at Ku Jin, and he roared furiously, you tricked the old man. Ku Jin remained silent. He noticed that this little girl's strength was much stronger than he'd imagined. She was too formidable. Ku Jin glanced at Shao-Chi and then he turned around and left. He didn't hesitate at all. The old man was both shocked and furious when he saw Ku Jin flee, and he hurriedly turned around and left as well. Shao-Chi was about to chase after him. Meanwhile, her beautiful brows knit together slightly, and she turned around to look at Yi Xian. At this moment, countless souls were surging towards the soul-suppressing sword that stood before Yi Xian. As it absorbed more and more souls, the aura emanated by the soul-suppressing sword had practically multiplied by a few times. Shao-Chi's brows knit together slightly because the bridge beneath her and Yi Xian had suddenly started trembling. Danger. Shao-Chi walked over to Yi Xian's side. Suddenly the entire bridge exploded apart. Both Yi Xian and Shao-Chi had vanished. Not long after Yi Xian and Shao-Chi vanished, a middle-aged man appeared here, and there were 2 old men behind him. One of the old men was Ku Jin from before. Ku Jin glanced at the surroundings and his face was filled with bewilderment. They were here just now. The middle-aged man glanced at the surroundings and said, are you sure that little girl has attained the extraordinary sword god realm? Ku Jin nodded and his expression gradually became solemn. Absolutely. The middle-aged man spoke softly, this ruler isn't simple at all. Ku Jin gazed at the middle-aged man. General Fang Yi, we must eliminate these 2 people if we want to conquer the chaotic universe. The middle-aged man glanced at Ku Jin. Are you going to kill them? Ku Jin's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly lowered his head. He was one of the 3 peerless generals under the command of the king of the northern region. A peerless general. Chapter 662. As soon as the final word was spoken, a sword howl suddenly shot into the sky. At this moment, practically the entire chaotic universe could hear this sword howl. Not only that, but as soon as this sword hum rang out, all of the swords in the entire Chaosverse began to tremble violently, resonating with it. A ray of light flashed through the starry sky like a shooting star. The expressions of everyone in the starry sky changed when they saw it. It should be described as terror. All the experts present revealed expressions of terror. This sword strike made all of them feel the aura of death. It was especially so for Xiao Biao. He could smell the scent of death the moment he saw the sword light. Death. At this moment, his face was pale as a sheet, because a voice in the depths of his heart was telling him that he would definitely die. However, he didn't just stand there and wait for death. He roared furiously, circulated all the profound energy within his body, and executed his strongest attack. However, his strongest attack seemed so insignificant in the face of the sword light. Moreover, his energy vanished without a trace when it was still 3 kilometers away from the ray of light. That attack. It disregarded everything. An instant later, Xiao Biao's figure stiffened on the spot, and then he started to vanish bit by bit. Meanwhile, a young swordsman appeared in front of him. It was Yi Xian. Xiao Biao gazed at Yi Xian with a bewildered expression. What sword technique was that? It was. He hadn't even finished speaking when he vanished without a trace. He didn't just vanish. His soul, karma, fate and everything else had vanished as well. Simply speaking, he'd been completely obliterated by that attack. The surroundings were deathly silent. Everyone was dumbstruck. A single attack. That attack had instantly annihilated Xiao Biao, who was at the god rank realm. Yi Xian paid no attention to them. He turned around and walked over to Enlancio. Enlancio had stopped detonating herself. Yi Xian's face gradually warped when he saw Enlancio's state, and the executing heaven sword in his hand started to tremble violently. Enlancio spoke softly, "I'm fine." Yi Xian suddenly turned around. Bang! A ray of red light shot into the sky from within him. Bloodline activation. Almost instantly Yi Xian's hair turned blood red. Yi Xian looked at Fang Yi and said savagely, "One? Sword?" Fang Ye's expression changed drastically when he heard this, and he immediately said, "Retreat." With that he turned around and left. At this time Yi Xian suddenly rushed out. Buzz! A blood-red ray of light flashed through the battlefield. Kill! In the distance Yi Xian suddenly roared. His voice was like that of a wild beast. Yi Xian charged directly into the midst of the expeditionary army. Streaks of blood-red sword light swept out in all directions like a dense rainstorm. Everywhere it passed, corpses were strewn everywhere. At the end of the starry sky, Fang Yi suddenly stopped and turned to look at where Yi Xian was. At this moment, Yi Xian was madly chasing after his expeditionary army. The expeditionary army's speed was not as fast as Yi Xian. Moreover, Yi Xian's sword was too sharp, and a bloody head would fall with every slash. Fang Yi was about to attack when an old man beside him suddenly said, "General, you can't die. You have to think about the bigger picture." Fang Yi stared fixedly at Yi Xian, and the murderous intent in his eyes was almost tangible. The old man said solemnly, "General, this person cannot be defeated. Please think about the bigger picture." Fang Yi looked at Yi Xian, who was killing madly in the distance. "Yi Xian, my black-yellow great world will remember you." In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly raised his head and looked at Fang Yi with a ferocious expression. "Please kill me." Fang Yi glanced coldly at Yi Xian, then turned around and left. Behind him, miserable screams rang out incessantly. A massacre. After the activation of his bloodline, Yi Xian's combat strength could be said to have increased by several levels. In addition, he held the executing heaven sword in his hand. Therefore, wherever he passed, almost no one could stop him. In addition, the experts of God Nation were also attacking. Therefore, in a short while, the expeditionary army was completely wiped out. All of them were beheaded. However, Fang Yi and the few people in the lead had already escaped. In the starry sky, Yi Xian stood quietly. Around him, an extremely powerful aura constantly shook the surroundings. Bloodline power. Yi Xian's eyes were closed, and his right hand tightly grasped the sword in his hand, which was trembling. Suppress. He was suppressing the bloodline power in his body. In fact, after the bloodline power was activated, he had never completely released its power. He did not dare to release it completely, because he knew that if he continued to release it, he might lose himself. The power of this bloodline was simply too terrifying. About half an hour later, Yi Xian opened his eyes. At this time he had already returned to normal. After recovering, Yi Xian turned around and walked in front of Enlancio. He opened his right hand and a white jade bottle appeared in front of Enlancio. Enlancio did not refuse. She opened the jade bottle and swallowed 2 thumb-sized medicinal pills. As soon as the medicinal pills entered her body, the injuries on Enlancio's body began to recover at an extremely fast speed. A hint of surprise flashed in Enlancio's eyes. She looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian was also a little shocked in his heart. He did not expect the effect of this medicinal pill to be so good. This was a good thing. At this time Shengguan Xian'er and the others came to Yi Xian's side. Shengguan Xian'er bowed slightly to Yi Xian. City Lord Yi, where is His Majesty? Given the way the Shenhuang Great World operated, even if the Chaosverse surrendered, it wouldn't meet a good end. Shengguan Xian'er nodded. I know a lot of things about the Divine Kingdom. If you need anything you can come to me. Yi Xian nodded. Help me find 2 people. Shengguan Xian'er asked, who? Yi Xian waved his right hand and 2 portraits appeared in front of Shengguan Xian'er. Shengguan Xian'er took a look and nodded, sure. Yi Xian hesitated and said, there's one more person. With that, he waved his right hand and a portrait appeared in front of Shengguan Xian'er. Shengguan Xian'er took a look and nodded, understood. With that she left quietly. After Shengguan Xian'er left, Yi Xian returned to the Shenwu city. As soon as he arrived at the gate of the Shenwu city, Yi Xian was stunned. There was a woman standing at the gate. He knew this person. It was Zhao Mu who had disappeared for a long time. And now, Zhao Mu had also reached the Emperor realm. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian walked in front of Zhao Mu and smiled. Miss Zhao, long time no see. I missed you. Zhao Mu suddenly punched the ground. Boom. The ground exploded. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. What was the meaning of this? Zhao Mu took a look at Yi Xian and left. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he followed her. Soon Yi Xian followed Zhao Mu to the peak of a mountain. In front of a wooden house, he saw the Southern Sect Martial Master. But at this moment, the Southern Sect Martial Master's face was not good. Yi Xian frowned. Senior Yu? The Southern Sect Martial Master smiled. Little friend Yi, long time no see. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. Senior Yu? The Southern Sect Martial Master said softly. My time is up. My time is up. Yi Xian said in a deep voice. What do you mean? The Southern Sect Martial Master smiled. Failed to reach the God realm. Yi Xian was stunned, then said, how is that possible? Senior? The Southern Sect Martial Master said softly, to reach the God realm, I need too much Tendo Source. I thought I didn't need this Tendo Source, but, saying this, the smile on his face became bitter. Even the cleverest housewife can't cook without rice. Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian. This time, I asked you to come because I have a favor to ask of you. Zhao Mu, that last, she couldn't speak for some reason since she was young. Plus she rarely goes out. Yi Xian suddenly said, Senior, please wait. Saying this, he took out a white jade bottle and handed it to the Southern Sect Martial Master. This bottle of medicine is for healing, please take it first. The Southern Sect Martial Master shook his head. No. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, Senior, try it first. The Southern Sect warrior glanced at Yi Xian, then took the white jade bottle. He took a look at the white jade bottle, then swallowed an elixir. Soon, a wave of pure energy emanated from his body. In the room, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. In front of him were 5 Dao Realm swords. His greatest trump cards were the World Prison Pagoda and the Infinite Sword. The lethality of the Infinite Sword was too strong. It could directly disregard any realm. Moreover, after killing someone he could automatically enter the realm of emptiness. Simply put, his sword technique was suitable for assassination and escape. His greatest weakness now was that his realm wasn't enough. He had to increase his realm. Yi Xian picked up a Dao Realm sword and stabbed it into his abdomen. Absorb. Yi Xian's entire face revealed an intoxicated expression. It was too comfortable. The energy of this Dao Realm sword was much purer than the Fate Realm sword. These 5 Dao Realm swords could completely increase his realm by another level. While Yi Xian was cultivating, more and more experts returned to the God Nation. These were all summoned back by Little Seven in the name of the God Master. One must know that there were many experts in the God race, many of whom were outside, and now these experts were rushing back to the God Nation. These experts had a strong sense of belonging to the God Nation. In the vast starry sky, a huge starship slowly flew by. This starship was nearly 10,000 feet long and several thousand feet wide. Above the starship there was a rock demonic beast. The rock's body was even bigger than the starship. It was simply covering the sky. On the head of the rock stood a middle-aged man. This person was the Marshal of the Northern Region, Lian Xiaotian. He controlled almost 80% of the Northern Region's army. In the Northern Region, he was truly below 1 and above tens of thousands. Behind Lian Xiaotian stood 2 old men and a man. This man was Fang Yi. The middle-aged man in the lead said softly, Is that sword of his really that strong? Fang Yi nodded slightly, very strong. Thinking of Yi Xian's sword back then, he still had lingering fear. That sword, he could not block it at all. The middle-aged man smiled slightly. This is getting interesting. With that said, he looked into the distance and said softly, I never thought that this chaotic universe would have such hidden talents. Fang Yi bowed slightly. This subordinate is useless. Lian Xiaodan shook his head. It was us who underestimated the chaotic universe. With that said, he slowly clenched his right hand. Fifth-dimensional treasure. By the way, I heard that there is a swordsman expert behind him? Fang Yi nodded. It is said that it is a female swordsman. Lian Xiaotian smiled slightly. I hope she is not too weak. His words were filled with invincible confidence. Chapter 666. They were looking for the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian fell silent. He hadn't expected that these people would actually be looking for the woman in a plain dress. Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. Why are you looking for her? Lian Xiaotian grinned. We like to eliminate weeds by the roots. Do you understand what I mean? Yi Xian instantly came to an understanding. These people didn't just want to kill Yi Xian, they wanted to kill everyone related to Yi Xian as well. But was it easy to kill the woman in a plain dress? Yi Xian suddenly felt like laughing when he thought about killing the woman in a plain dress. He couldn't deny that Lian Xiaotian was very strong. But the problem was that it was the woman in a plain dress. She was an existence that could suppress the entire world prison. After all, the sixth pavilion was so strong, and he was extremely respectful towards the woman in a plain dress. Suddenly Lian Xiaotian said, What? You don't dare to let her come out? Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. He thought for a moment and then he waved his right hand. A portrait appeared not too far away from him. It was the portrait of the woman in a plain dress. Her clothes were pure and untainted by even a speck of dust. Yi Xian gazed at Lian Xiaotian. Go ahead and look for her. He actually hoped that the members of the Yellow World would help him find the woman in a plain dress. It had been so long and he really missed her. Lian Xiaotian gazed at the old man called Xinji. The old man nodded slightly, and then he waved his right hand. The portrait of the woman fell onto the altar. Xinji said, I need some time. Lian Xiaotian asked, How long exactly? Xinji said, It depends on how far away they are. If they're close, then only a moment. If they're far away, then around 2 hours. Lian Xiaotian nodded. Then we'll wait for now. As he spoke, he gazed at Yi Xian and sized Yi Xian up. Becoming the foster son of our king is the dream of countless people from the Yellow World, yet you refused. You'll regret it. Yi Xian chuckled. I don't have the habit of acknowledging others as my father. Lian Xiaotian smiled. Perhaps you don't know what sort of fortuitous encounter you've lost. Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, You're from the northern region. In other words, there's also the southern region and the eastern region? Lian Xiaotian looked at Yi Xian. What? Are you interested in our black-yellow great world? Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm just a little curious. I'm curious as to why only people from the north have come. Are the others not interested in that supreme treasure or this chaos verse? Lian Xiaotian chuckled. Of course they're interested, but it's us from the northern region who found you first. Moreover, the spatial stronghold here belongs to us. Without our help, it'll take them at least a month or 2 to get here. Chapter 667. Everyone here was looking at the old man called Xinji. Xinji's face was slightly pale. Clearly he'd exhausted quite a bit of his strength. Suddenly, he formed a seal with his hands and then he pressed it forward lightly. The laws of the world trace. Peer. As soon as he finished speaking, the space before him suddenly trembled violently, and then a scene appeared in front of him. It was a boundless starry sky. The surroundings were deathly silent, and only specks of starlight flickered there. It didn't take long for a woman in a plain dress to appear at the end of his field of vision. She wore a plain dress, had long hair that hung loosely on her shoulders, and the ends of her hair were tied up by a violet ribbon. She was walking towards the distant starry sky. Everyone was looking at the plain-dressed woman. Yi Xian was looking at the woman in a plain dress as well, and he instantly became slightly excited when he saw her. It really is her. Within the tower. The 5th level. Ayu Yinjia and Yi Ling were looking at the woman as well. Ayu's gaze had become extremely solemn as he gazed at her. It's her. Yinjia's eyes were extremely solemn as well. She's still in the 4th dimension. The woman in a plain dress. They weren't unfamiliar with her at all. Because they'd met her when the tower led them to battle those 3 fellows. The strength of those 3 was simply indescribable with words. Among the 3 of them, apart from the sword cultivator in the white robe, The woman in the plain dress and the man in green could be said to be extremely irritable. Especially the woman in the plain dress, her temper was very unstable. Meanwhile, Ayu suddenly said, "Something bad is about to happen." Yinjia nodded, "It is." Yiling was quite curious. "Big sister Ayu, is big sister Su Chang very strong?" Ayu nodded, "Very strong." Yiling blinked, "Even stronger than my older brother?" Ayu hesitated for a moment and said, "You think your older brother is very strong?" Yiling nodded, "He is. I think that he should be able to fight big sister Su Chang." Ayu said, "If it's a competition of shamelessness, then your older brother is absolutely invincible." Thick skin. Yiling covered her mouth and giggled. Big brother's skin is much thicker than before. As she spoke up to hear, she seemed to have thought of something, and her expression suddenly turned gloomy. Ayu asked softly, "What's wrong?" Yiling lowered her head slightly. When he was in Qingqing he didn't even smile much. At that time he had a hard time. Ayu gently rubbed Yiling's little head. "There must be many people in this world who suffer more than him. Cherish everything you have now, understand?" Yiling nodded her little head. "I will cultivate well and not burden you in the future." Ayu laughed and said, "You're actually very strong but you don't have any killing intent."